Our first thing after lunch is we're going to go through the 2018 Excellence in Analytics Awards. We call them the ANNYs. And I can tell you this year it was actually amazing. We had by far more applications than we've ever had. I think it was at least double. It might have been close to triple the number that we've had in the past. So a huge variety of applications in terms of the analytics, the organizations, et cetera. It was definitely a lot to wade through. So what I'm going to do is give you a 5-minute or so overview of the ANNYs, the process, the qualifications for the award. What we'll then do is introduce our 4 finalists for this year. 3 of the 4 of them were able to be here in person. They'll each have 5 minutes to kind of give an overview of their project and what it was about. And we have a video from the 4th company. After that, we'll award the winner. We'll do a few photos with them and so forth, and then we'll continue on. I'll just let you know that the winners, when you see them announced, so forth, they're just in alphabetical order. We're going to have them present in alphabetical order. So all you analytical people, don't try and infer any pattern. It's simply alphabetical. And so just to remind you, as we get into it this year, we've had a lot of very interesting companies. The current reigning champ was Cisco Marketing from last year. And interestingly enough, Tom was talking about some of what they've been up to in recent times in his chat just a little bit ago. There's been a broad range of projects across these companies that won as well. And there's a few folks in the room here who are past winners. So we have evaluation criteria. When you apply, you fill out a form. If any of you who didn't do it yet, who would like to do it next year, it's actually not that huge of a form. There's a series of questions that we ask about the project to give us background, and there's 5 key criteria. So the first one is outcomes. And this is about, can we see evidence that you actually had some measurable and sustained success? So it's not like a one-time thing, and it was amazing analytics, and you had a campaign that was the most successful campaign ever, but that was it, right? It ought to be something, it was a process that was built that then improved all the campaigns moving forward, as an example. So we look for that, and having had it actually target some specific objectives versus just lucking into something. Ambition was the organization trying to do something innovative and unique, particularly as it relates to analytical methodologies and techniques. This could be, in some cases, innovative by anyone's standards, truly cutting edge. In other cases, if it's an organization that we know has been lagging a little in analytics and they were doing something that was clearly innovative and cutting edge for that organization, that's okay as well. The idea is you're pushing the envelope to the extent the organization's ready to handle it, and that you have some ambition to really force a different conversation. Scale has a couple aspects. Ideally, the project itself will scale, but we also had some questions in the questionnaire. What we want to see is evidence that the project, however successful, was within the context of an actual investment and overall analytics program at an enterprise level. So if a big company hired 2 brilliant data scientists and had an award, a project that could win awards left and right all over the place, but it was a one-time effort from these 2 people, they would have gotten rated pretty low on the scale. So we're looking for, and we also have questions just around how big is the organization and what are some of the other things you're into, because we want to make sure that this is an overall effort that led to a very successful project, not a one-time thing. Skills, this is about the skills not necessarily of the analytics team that's building these analytics, but the organization. Was there something about how it was deployed that improved their skills in using and utilizing analytics? And those skills could be, even in a scenario, maybe helping sales teams use propensity models for the first time, or helping other parts of the organization where it's not the high-end professionals that are used to this stuff actually make use of it. So we're looking that there was some improvement of skills. And then, of course, insights, looking that there were some insights found, some things that were very strong indication of action, maybe unexpected, and so forth. And so these are the 5 criteria that the award was judged on. And we're all analytical, so of course we had to have our criteria and our scoring. We actually used a spreadsheet, and I got to admit, just because I don't get to get hands-on too much anymore, once I had the spreadsheet laid out, I said, what if we wanted to weight some of these different? Even though we had no intention, so I went and added so we could weight them different. I've got the little weight cells. They're all a 1, but I had fun adding it in. So we made a little game out of this to some degree. We had 5 judges. So we had Jack Phillips, CEO and co-founder, along with Tom. We had Bob Morrison, myself, and then Kathy Kuntz. So the 5 of us all voted. What we did was we specifically distributed the scoring grid, and we had a discussion in absence of any of the applications about, kind of what are we looking for and what do we want to do. And we all ranked everybody on a 1 to 10 scale in each of the 5. You average them, you sort them, you add it all up, and then there's a winner. So the winners were decided based on those independent assessments by all 5 of us, and who came out on top with the overall pattern of the highest scores. One thing I'll point out back to the analytic component, I actually faked this data just to illustrate the concept a little more aggressively so you could see it. What's interesting is, as you can imagine, there would be some applications that were super strong on a couple dimensions, not as strong on others. And so what was interesting was how, you could have one that was phenomenal at skills and scale, but hadn't necessarily had as many proven outcomes yet. I know there was one application we had, for example, that was great, but it actually hadn't been put into production and rolled out yet. They had only just proved it, so that really knocked them down very much on outcomes, but they were pretty strong on the other things. And you could just see the different shapes here. Obviously, by the time you're going to win, you're probably reasonably high in all of them. But I'd encourage people to submit, because as long as you're hitting a couple of these really strong and you're not lacking in the others, you're going to have a good shot. It's very hard to find a project that's truly a 10 out of 10 on everything. In fact, we've never had anybody get 10 out of 10 consistently on every one of those. So with that, the 4 finalists we have this year are in alphabetical order again, right? Freddie Mac, HDFC Bank, they're a bank based in India. A lot of you in the States may not have heard of them. Honeywell, and Steelcase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a very brief overview of each project at a high level, and then we're going to invite each of the teams up. They'll have about 5 minutes. They've each brought 1 to 2 people to outline what they did. After we go through each of those, then we'll get to the winner. So for our first one, Freddie Mac, they had a project called Automated Collateral Evaluation. And the leader of this effort was Michael Manti, the Director of Quantitative Analysis. And I believe Michael's going to be the one here today to tell you a little more about it. But the goal of this project was very interesting. It was to reduce the time and cost of the process of getting a loan approval. So as you know, if you've ever bought a house or refinanced a house, one key traditional step is you have to get an appraisal. And that appraisal, first of all, is going to cost you $500 to $700 depending on where you live. You're going to have to schedule it. It takes a week or so to get it. The appraisal may or may not come back where you need it to come back. It adds a lot of stress, cost, and time. What they did was combined a bunch of external available data on market values and so forth. They built some models that would attempt to estimate a property's value based on their internal and external data combined, and they were able to get the models to the point where, in a lot of cases, they were very, very close to what an actual appraisal had come back, and they started to eliminate where the model seemed to do was able to be validated, had been doing a good job. They eliminated the need for an appraisal, so you now save your $500 to $700 and your couple of weeks, and it goes fast. And so in their first 9 months, they removed 7 days from the typical approval process on average. They were able to eliminate 200,000 total days from loan processes in those 9 months, over $10 million saved based on the $500. And then another benefit of it was the close rates actually improved. So by the time you're putting the cost barrier and the time barrier, and sometimes maybe the appraisal's a dicey one, some of them fall through. So more people were actually able to get into their home. So some pretty interesting results there. And so with that, I'll introduce Michael Manti to come forward and tell you a little bit more about it. There we go. I'll put it on your slide for you.
Okay.
I'll let you hop up there.
Okay, should I stand at lectern or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that way people can see you.
So, thanks, Bill. That was a good introduction. Yeah, maybe I'll have you do it when I go elsewhere. As succinct an explanation of the process as I've ever heard. So this is On the right-hand side, we have a little diagram that represents Freddie Mac's single-family business and the appraisal that is essential to that business. It flows through all these different parts at the point of the origination of the mortgage, and it goes all the way back into the securitization of the mortgage. Freddie Mac has pioneered a lot of credit risk transfer deals, and they are very attentive to their due diligence, especially on a program like ACE. So the key things, so the key lessons I got out of the project were very similar to many of the themes that we've heard earlier today. The difficulties, first amongst them, and this is pretty common in finance, you're trying to help a lender or a borrower, and you're trying to protect yourself and your investors. So when you're waiving an appraisal, it is not I would like to think that the models are perfect and they do an absolutely they do a good job, but they don't do a perfect job of mitigating every risk. So you are taking some incremental risk. So you need to be careful. You need to restrict the application of the model to the areas where it's appropriate to use it. And that's always a balancing act, because once the program is successful, there's certain areas of the company, sales, they want to go for it. They want to waive all the appraisals, get those in, The investors are like, wait a minute, I saw this one loan that came in through this security, and it looks a little, our valuation is different. Why did you guys think this was, a $100,000 home? We think it's a $75,000 home. So we get, very specific feedback on particular loans and houses, and that gets a little hairy sometimes. But so we try to minimize those. You want to worry about your false positives. So we're another key thing that an institution the size of Freddie Mac, schlepping your data, that's a technical term, across your system boundaries is a challenge. We have data governance people. They do a great job. But they're, often, they're picky, and for the right reasons. You don't want people putting, protected personal information in the wrong systems where the wrong people could get access to them. Thankfully, the stuff that I work on, my team works on, is not, there's not a lot of protected information. It's all about the properties. It's all about the collateral. So so that is a much simpler process. But we have an analytics enclave, which is a group of systems and databases, a Hadoop cluster. There's a columnar database that our analytics teams use for reporting. And getting the data into that system, you got to get the right approvals, you got to get the right holes opened in the firewalls, and that's always a lot of fun. I'm sure that people in this room are very familiar with these sorts of processes. And that's where convincing the gatekeepers comes in. You need to get, convince everybody that you haven't put the wrong data, that you're not using the wrong data and then putting it in the wrong places, and that the data that you're using is relevant to the decision that you're making. And you also have, in finance, it's common to have what they call a three lines of defense model for risk management. And being in the business area, you're the first line. There might be an enterprise risk function that is the second line, and then an audit function that is a third line. So we're in the first line, and we have to justify things to the second and third line. So those are other gatekeepers that we need to worry about, as well as, Freddie Mac is in conservatorship. We have two halves we also have a safety and soundness regulator that we have to convince. So there needs to be a lot of buy-in. And that gets tough when you're explaining the behavior of a noisy system. As I mentioned before, it's not going to get every single one right. You're going to have some people complaining, this valuation was off. I think this was too much. You took too much risk on letting this loan through without an appraisal. Other people are going to be like, this loan is golden. Why didn't it get ACE? Why did you make the borrower get an appraisal? This caused us a lot of headaches. So that. People tend to, you're dealing with, feedback that comes from a loan officer. Loan officer on their day-to-day business, if ACE makes a decision they don't like once, they're not happy with it. It doesn't matter if 99 times out of 100 ACE makes the right decision. We will often hear about it because for a single person, single loan officer, one loan is a big deal. That's a big deal to them. Where we succeeded was by starting with something simple. We went through a proof of concept. We did a pilot. The things that we did were just rules-based. They were based on data that had already been pre-processed and cleaned, so that we knew that we had a pretty high opportunity for success on that. And we started with that first simple proof of concept, and we've been building and rebuilding new prototypes ever since. So it starts with using existing models, applying those. Bill mentioned our automated valuation model, Home Value Explorer. That's a key component. We're augmenting our expert rules-based systems with further model development. We also were engaged our subject matter experts in credit policy early. These are folks that that were out in the field as appraisers, so they know what to look for. They knew what information did you look for on prior appraisals? What information from public records did you look for? Those sorts of things. What would you trust? What factors should go into these models? Keeping attention on the business problem was also key. It gets easy for data science types, I'm one, to get lost in the technical nuances and having the fun of playing with, you set me loose on a Hadoop cluster with terabytes of data. What can I find out? How can I bring the system to its knees? That kind of stuff. So keeping attention on the business problem is, and you also need to stay ruthlessly pragmatic. Not all of the systems that are operational are necessarily going to be able to connect directly to your Hadoop cluster that you're using to fit your models, your other systems that you're using to test things out. So you really need to think about, how do I boil this down to a score or a rule that I can then apply to automate a decision, rather than have it be something that's easily ingestible and that can be conveyed from one process to another. And you need to stay engaged with your delivery and operations people on that. And that, I think, is all I have.
Thank you. And just real quick, I'll just clarify as well. The guidance and what we asked everybody to do was, we agreed I'd kind of do let's call it the numbers, bits and bytes, just what were the results at a high level thing. We asked each of the speakers to give you a little more of the soft background of what they did, why, what were some of the challenges. So if you're wondering, that this is intentional, that the talks are gonna be the way they are. So our next finalist is HDFC. They were unable to be here all the way from India, unfortunately. Obviously, we announced the winners, I guess it was just about 3 to 4 weeks ago, but for a trip that big, it's difficult. So in a moment, we're gonna see a video from Yudhishthar Tamari from the team. But their project was Cash Loan Cross-Sell Trigger. And the leader was Kaushik Gate, who is the head of Customer Analytics and Data Sciences. And this was an interesting project in that they were developing transaction level models as opposed to longitudinal customer level models. And what they were looking for was the opportunity to offer a cash loan. And so excuse me, the analogy here in the States, although it has a bad reputation here, are like payday loans. People who are really living paycheck to paycheck, and they go and they try and get a loan. In India, there's a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck, and what they have an offer at the bank is, if you have some expenses coming that are due right now and your paycheck's next week, they can advance you some cash to help cover that. So it's a market that when you need it, you really need it, but if you don't need it, you don't have much use for it. So targeting is really, really important. And they started with market research. They actually went out and had focus groups and surveys with a bunch of people who make use of this product historically, and found out what makes you use it, when are you using it, why are you using it? And based on that feedback then, they went through and built a variety of models to identify the types of transactions when combined with some of the customer information that would lead you to believe this person might be in need right now of a cross-sell offer to take out a loan in the short term. On the back end of that, they also put in place some multi-channel delivery mechanisms. So just like with any type of marketing program, now you know you want to make me that offer. What's the best way to make me that offer? They customize that. So the results, they had over $8 million in incremental revenue in the first year from this program. 2.5 times increase in employee cross-sell productivity. So the employees who are maybe on the front lines at a call center, et cetera, they got 2.5 times more efficient. A really impressive 7 times increase in response to offers for loans. So 7 times the response rate of their historical response rate to these because they were better targeted. And all of that, they still had a 60% reduction in how many communications they made. So they cut their communications almost in half, raised the response rate by 7x, the productivity, et cetera. So, you know, really, really interesting mix of results. Now, we're going to play the video here, and we'll cross our fingers that all works well. So let's see if you can get it going.
Because every individual believes that this is their success, apart from organization success. This is something which I personally feel is real success for HDFC Bank, because typically in any such kind of projects where some kind of change is required, either in terms of process or people's mindset, the biggest hurdle that organization face is not in terms of skills, but in terms of mindsets. People may not be willing to contribute because of multiple reasons. Maybe they feel that, what if I take initiative and this project fails? Will failure of project will be considered as my failure? Let me do things in tried and tested way. At least I will not run the risk of failure. Another set of people are there who believe that even if this project will be successful, what is there for me? Will I be seen as a person who has just executed this, or I will be seen as a person who has contributed significantly for the idea generation, project initiation, and taking it to the execution? So all of this mindset, all of these hurdles, I think can be overcome by very easily if the thought leader or the leader ensures that there is an inclusive environment, and people understand that even if project doesn't succeed, then also this will be a learning and it will be appreciated. All the efforts will be awarded, will be rewarded appropriately as long as the efforts are in the right direction. I think this is one of the key learning that I have understood so far. For a success of a project, probably it's not only about skill or it's not only about resources, but it's also about mindset, because finally we are dealing with people. So, for example, in this project, I think the success also came very fast to us because we deliberately slowed down the process so that each individual in the team feels that all the hidden patterns, all the ideas evolved slowly over a period of time along with his or her contribution. So even though certain things were crystal clear in terms of process, what to do, a deliberate slow down to ensure that all the people are on the same page and they feel the part of journey of exploring things, of finding out something new, and feel that they are the key contributor is something which is very unique, because of which I believe that this project has been considered as a success, not only by other teams and external benchmark, because facts are there in terms of numbers, but by everybody, by organizations and everybody to the individual level also, because of this fact, because of inclusiveness, and because each person believes that he is the contributor, and he protects it, nurtures it to the full extent. And believe me, my understanding with whatever 13, 14 years of my experience is that nobody wants to shy away from responsibility as long as they feel that their contribution to this project is very significant. Everybody is willing to go extra mile as long as they believe that they are doing something significant. So making them feel that the success has come because of them will make them responsible and make them less defendable. This is Yudhishthir here, signing off. Thank you.
All right. I'm always amazed, no matter where you go in the world, the offices look exactly the same, don't they? So, all right, our next finalist is Honeywell. They submitted a project called Dynamic Value Pricing, and it was actually had two sponsors. There was Audrey Gorham, who was a VP of Global Pricing, and Carrie Kendrick, who was VP of Global Aftermarket. And so this project related to, you heard earlier, actually, we had Abhi teed up to speak months ago before they even submitted an application. He spoke about some of the industrial products that they make, and some of them are quite expensive and rather big, and then to get parts for them, it's not like you run to the auto parts store and just pick one up. Some of these things are difficult to get into, or there's the aftermarket. So they had a process that could take 4 to 6 weeks. If I called and said, hey, Honeywell, can I get some of these parts and what'll it cost me? Could take up to 4 to 6 weeks for me to actually get a bid back. As you can imagine, that's not, by today's standards, a very rapid response. So what they did, they consolidated a variety of internal data sources as well as market data on what the pricing had been historically, and they developed some models that would do a prescriptive price for that part at that point in time. And then they integrated those models into the quoting and contracting system so that, let's say, it came up, it's going to be, $100,000. It would actually generate a quote automatically and a contract, the legal contract to go with that, automatically filling in that price. So they took the response time from 4 to 6 weeks for a salesperson to get to a quote, and a lot of manual process in that quote, down to seconds, and you'd have these automatic quotes generated. They got over $110 million in incremental sales generated from this in the first year, and it's the largest value from analytics ever realized at Honeywell. And as you saw earlier, they had largely done a lot of BI in the past, so they hadn't been going after these proactive things. They then rolled this out globally. So they had initially tested it in one area, and then they rolled it out globally to piggyback on that success. So I believe we have Todd Page, correct, is here today to tell us a little more about it. Yep.
So I'm probably one of the only people that will speak to you guys today that has relatively nothing to do with analytics. I work in Honeywell Aerospace Global Pricing, and I am, I guess, one of the mythical purple people we talked about earlier. I serve as more or less a translator for the pricing business processes to the analytics team, which Abhi leads. And the fact that my role exists at all in aerospace is somewhat remarkable. Aerospace is typically pretty conservative, and generally that's a good thing. I mean, I was thinking on the flight over, I'm glad that they don't rush putting together the APUs or the safety systems or any of that type of stuff on the aircraft. But when it comes to business process, at least within the pricing world, we were relying on kind of the tried and true methods that had gotten us through to this point, but we're showing their age. And so one of the things that our leadership decided was that we needed to think differently about this. And Abhi talked about it a little bit earlier. Our leadership brought in a consultant, had a number of multi-day workshops with our thought leaders within aerospace, and showed them not only what do good analytics look like, but what do bad analytics look like too. And in the end, it served as a bit of an incubator for some of the key projects that would later go on to show value for the company. Two of the folks that were in those meetings are the two of the names up on the screen here, Carrie Kendrick and Audrey Gorham. And actually, one of the projects that came out of it was this one. So it kind of goes back to show the key of getting that leadership buy-in. Coming out of those meetings, they were very excited about the whole idea. And we're definitely willing to dedicate resources to make it happen. That's why I'm here today. And as you can see, when you've got that kind of organizational horsepower behind something, the results can follow. I mean, 110 million in incremental revenue in just the first year, just blowing by the targets that the corporation had set for us. And I think, with that type of a dollar value delivered, leadership's going to keep coming back for more, right? They're like, hey, do that again. But beyond that, I think the organizational impact was key. For the first time, we used to have pricers. You go ask 3 different people for a price, you're probably going to get 3 different prices. Now we're on the same type of systems. Everything's coming out. Our analysts can actually analyze instead of being folks that spend all their time gathering data. And obviously, the impact of customer experience is significant. Now, at this point, customers, not only are they getting their quotes quicker, but they're getting ones that are more in line with what you would actually expect for the market. My third quote up there on the slide, one of our salespeople, she loves the tool because now she knows going into the room with the price that she's providing. It used to be you were rolling the dice, right? Is this a good one? Is this a bad one? Now she knows exactly what that response is going to look like, and people, it's really changed the game for the sales team. I think another really important point here is that the organization generally coming into this, they didn't know much about analytics, and I think that over the course of this project, as they've interacted with Abhi's team, it's almost like learning a new language, right? It used to be they would come to the team for, how do I automate this report, or how do I automate a data flow, or something like that. Now they're actually coming with questions around, how can I use data to prove this hypothesis, or to fix this business process that we have issues with, and they're even coming with questions that instead of just something specific to an issue within pricing, it's more around something that affects a whole value chain across customer experience. Something that might span pricing, the aftermarket, product support, you name it. And those are the types of business problems that really are going to generate a lot of ROI for us in the years to come. So I think it was a great success as a single project, but I think it's really laid the groundwork for a lot of future success as well.
All right, then our last finalist today is Steelcase. The 2 sponsors of their project were Eddie Schmidt, the Senior Vice President of Americas Sales, and Stefan Thielman, the Vice President of Finance for Americas Sales. And this project, they called it Predictive Leads. It was identifying location by location when that office might be in need of new furniture. And you can imagine, furniture is a huge investment. If you come to me when I just put furniture in last year or 2 years ago, I'm probably going to just be annoyed you've bothered me. At the same time, if you wait until you've heard on the street that I'm putting out bids and I've already been having conversations and being wined and dined by the other salespeople from the other companies, you might be a little bit too late. So the idea was, can we figure out exactly when we should target each location? And so they built a bunch of survival models off of the data they were able to pull together to identify when they thought a specific location would be hot. They integrated that into their Salesforce database, as well as created some reports and dashboards to track it. And the results were they were able to generate $1.8 billion in leads that they sent to the field. Now, of course, some of the leads, the field will go, oh, well, we already knew about that one. So 112 million of that was confirmed to be incremental once the sales force reviewed it, which the good news is then that means a lot of that was validation. Hey, your models are on target. We just already knew about it. And they're expecting that they'll close at least 50 million of that in 2018 as incremental sales as a result. And so with that, we're going to have Tim Merkel and Jorge Lozano, I believe, coming up. There's 2, or you could share. Your call.
Thanks, Bill. Predictive leads is an interesting story for us, and very similar to what Honeywell just said. It really has set the foundation for a lot of future work, and it's really exciting for us. About 5 years ago, we kicked off and started an advanced analytics team, and 4 years ago, we were about 9 months into that journey, about 4.5 years ago, we had a project that failed miserably. And in fact, our executive sponsor was the sponsor of that project. And so I always felt that we had let him down. He is extremely influential. He covers about $2.2 billion of our $3.1 billion in revenue. But he's also extremely influential across the leadership team, used to run our European division, and he also is extremely analytically savvy. So to have someone like that basically push us away and say, I don't want you in my space, felt really, really poor. And so what we did is, over the next few years, we worked on some pricing models and some other additional analytics that allowed us to work on the data. And we set the foundation of what we could potentially do with that. So Jorge and I spent a lot of time brainstorming, saying, how can we get Eddie back? How can we do something really special for his division? And so we had to completely scrap our thinking. And we reframed the problem. We set sort of in motion some new ideas. And we pitched it to our inbound CFO of the Americas division, who was coming over as an expat from Europe. We pitched it like day one. In fact, I think we had a call with him a month before he showed up. And Jorge took the lead on the project, so I wanted to include him in this. And we established this, and we rolled it out. And Jorge will tell you a little bit more about the model.
Thanks, Tim. The reason why this was such an innovation for us was because we were able to leverage some state-of-the-art actuarial models, actually augment them through the use of some modern machine learning techniques, and we were able to tailor it and make it fit to our industry through the use of very well thought through business rules and assumptions. And what we basically came out is with the capability of scoring the probability of any given site from our customers, how likely is it that they'll make a purchase within the next 18 months. But not only that, we were also able to do this for all of our competitors' sites. And I mean, in our industry, that is a gold mine. So I remember we came up with a proof of concept, and we were actually challenged to do a small pilot because some of the initial results and estimations seemed too good to be true. So we did a pilot, and we had a very successful pilot. And at a point in time where our company was going through a rough batch in our sales, they were below par, they were not up to our plan. We were given 60 days to transform this analytics initiative into a full-scale business program. That means that we went from proof of concept to business program in 90 days. And I mean, a lot of the organization came together. We had people from finance, marketing, IT, sales, obviously. And I mean, I remember the day we released the leads, the D-Day, I was actually kind of nervous and anxious to see what the reactions were going to be, et cetera. The feedback that we got within days of releasing the leads, we were being copied on these emails that were sent back and forth from senior sales executives saying, this is amazing. I talked to the customer and they were like, how did you know? Who told you? So but by far the best feedback that we can get are those numbers right there. $150 million worth of confirmed incremental opportunities added into our pipeline. And we expect to close 2018 with $50 million worth of incremental sales. That's 2% of the sales for the Americas business. So we were able to add 2% to our top line on an analytics-driven initiative in 90 days. Bill, I hope that's excellence in analytics.
He's a much better showman than I. You see why he's up here. I think the real power in this has really been that esprit de corps, that bringing this executive sponsor back in. We have all of our executives are now talking about this. They want data-driven marketing, and they want data-driven industrial model, and they want, which is incredibly powerful for our team, our teams across both all of BI all the way through advanced analytics. But more importantly, it's a lot of vindication. I mean, 4 years ago, Eddie told me to get out of his office. And today, he's talking to our board of directors. Last week, he actually spent 3 minutes talking about proprietary predictive machine learning algorithms, if that's not a mouthful, with our investors. And so we have completely, in a 90-day effort, and granted, we spent 2.5 years getting the data right, so all of you out there, I understand, it's a painful process, but when you can bounce off of things and do some amazing, the results will come. And so one thing I'll leave you with is, one, I want to thank Jorge, because one thing he did really, really well in this project was he convinced people it was worth doing. And he also did something we call changing lanes, which is he went far beyond the boundaries of what a traditional data scientist would do. And I allowed him to go a lot farther than a traditional data science manager would probably let their people go, to the point that he was building training, he was building marketing materials that were going out to the field, he was organizing our CRM group in order to integrate it so that we didn't have to change any processes. But furthermore, he was convincing people that this algorithm not only was effective, but that it could work for their business, and convincing them that they should use it and adopt it, and breaking through that human barrier we talked about in the fireside chat, which is it's not just the machine versus the human, it's the machine plus the human, and now we have a much more effective system. So I drove home from Chicago last year thinking, man, I wish we were on stage. I wish we had something to talk about at the ANNY Awards, and here we are. So thank you, Bill, thank you to IIA for including us in this. It's extremely proud for our team.
And thank you, Tim. Great coach.
Thank you. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to announce the winner in a second, and you guys talk amongst yourselves for about a minute. We're just going to get some pictures up on stage with the winner real quick. As soon as we get that done, we'll go into the next introduction. Let me find the box. So. All right, so after much deliberation, after the scoring, after almost weighting the scores differently but deciding we would not use that feature that I spent time adding into the spreadsheet, the winner was Honeywell. So Kath, you want to come up and hop in the pictures as well? There you go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Who wants to hold it? This is much heavier than it looks.
This is this guy. Well, thank you so much.
All right, and we got the photographers right there. Perfect. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.